All right, welcome everybody. Getting towards the end of geometry part A. We're finding the side lengths. And if you look at our triangle here, we have some information, okay? We know that we have a 90 degree in this corner. We know that we have a 28 degree in that corner. We know that we have a 19 as our side length over there. But we have a lot of missing information, okay? We're missing this bottom side length, we're missing this side length, and we're even missing this angle up top. Now, we could almost find all of this information, okay? For example, we could definitely figure out the other angle here because we know triangles add up to make 180. So we could do 90 plus 28, and whatever's left over there to get us to 180, that's what has to be in this corner. You know, we could subtract that from 180 and get what's in that angle. But today we're going to focus on how do we find this side length, and this fancy little cutesy font says using TRIG. Okay, so at the top of the paper, I hope you remember this, but I'm going to go ahead and write our geometry kind of war call here. SOHCAHTOA. And our goal is to use those same trig ratios as before to set up a nice little equation that we can solve. And the good news is we have Desmos. Desmos is just as simple as type it in, get the answer. So we're going to always stand at the angle where we have the information. So right now we have this 28, and I am going to draw a little person here every time, because I really want to get this right, that I am standing in this corner. Now, sometimes it's going to be kind of obvious. This is a normal triangle with the right angle in the bottom left. That's pretty standard. But when it gets funkier, like 5 and 7, where all of a sudden our triangle is flipped and leaned and turned, I really like drawing this little person. Okay? Now, we're going to have 3 pieces of information total: the angle, one of the side, and this x. You know, this is what the question really wants. Our answer needs to say x equals, and that's how our answer is going to look. We're going to try to solve for x. And so our goal is to use either SO or CA or TOA, sine, cosine, tangent, to set up a really quick little equation, type it in Desmos, and get it. So before we start, let's label these 3 sides to what they are. So what is, if we're standing in this corner, what is the 19? Is that an O, an A, or an H? All right, this is an H. That's the hypotenuse. All right. What about the X? Is the X, there's only 2 left, O or A? The X is an O, and that means the bottom one has to be an A, right? Okay. We've got them all labeled now. And which one of these letters do we not need at all? We don't need this A, right? We're going to need to use the 19 because that's the information that we get. And we're going to need to use the O because that's the whole point of the question, to find X. But we don't need to even consider the A, right? We could try to find A, but that's not what the question wants. It wants the O. So what we're going to do is choose, do we want to use sine or cosine or tangent? And the trick is use OH, don't use A. These 3, there's only one of them that uses the O and the H. Which one is it? Sine. So we're going to want to use the sine for this question, and it will change, and that's really almost the only thing you got to choose when you solve these questions is this supposed to be a sine, a cosine, or a tangent? All right, let's do it, because at this point we're basically almost finished with the question, okay? What we need to do is set up our little equation here. We're going to write SIN, which is short for sine. And it's not that much shorter, but the other ones are considerably shorter. And then we're going to kind of have a little spot right here. We're going to have equals a fraction. This is just like we did on the last day where we made trig ratios. And we're going to put these three numbers into our equation here. All right? What we were doing before is putting, you know, the number and the number. But today, we're going to be missing one of these pieces. So we know that 19 is the H, and that sign is O divided by H with H on the bottom. And so this 19 is my bottom number. Now, where does the 28 go? Does it go after the sign or does it go on top? It just says SIN, which is the abbreviation for sign. The 28 is going to go right here. 28 degrees. Your angle is always the one that comes right after the trig. It goes trig, angle, number, number, or side, side, the lengths of the sides. And so this X here is the top, because we don't know what number should be on top there. Mr. Collier, A1? Sure. Yeah. Isaiah Coleman for dismissal. So we're set up right here. And the good news is the question is over. We go to Desmos, we type it in, we're finished. Now, if you have your computer, if you're following along, if you plan to actually learn how to do this, you need to type it in with me, all right? Not just to watch Mr. Collier do it, pause the highlights, pause whatever you're doing, let's type it in. If I type sine 28 equals X divided by 19, okay? So go ahead, type that in. Type it in. I'm borderline about to stand up and walk around. All we got to do is make a little fraction and type it in. So we can handle this. Let's do it. Have a good day, man. This video will be posted up, and I'll post it on Canvas. All right. Once we got it typed in, let's look at our answer. Now, my answer says 8.9. What does your answer say? It's different, right? I heard 5.1. Okay. So, super important here. That's why I really wanted you guys to type it in. Okay? In trig, there's kind of two different, you know how there's like feet and meters? There's the metric way of doing things and the American standard way of doing things. There's Fahrenheit and there's Celsius. Same with degrees, there's two things. Sorry, same with kind of angles. There's degrees, which is what we have always talked about and which is what you'll be talking about until you get all the way to like, you know, calculus or a real trig class. If you hit this settings button over here, go ahead and hit this settings button for me. There is an option at the bottom that says radians and degrees. Radians, that's like fancy calculus degrees. It means the same thing. It's like I said, it's just like Celsius versus Fahrenheit. We're always working in degrees. So really simple. Just click that button, and when you click that button, it's going to fix it for you. You don't have to do anything else. So now do you see that it's changed to match mine at 8.9? Are we cool with that? Yeah. All right. Well, then there we go. That's it. 8.9. 8.9. And so we took our time, or maybe I took my time going through this, but just figure out, okay, I'm working with OH, that's sign, boom, 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 type it in, done. These are questions that you can do super fast, 30 seconds. So I'm going to try to speed it up here for number 5, and we'll see how it goes, okay? Now, start off and figure out what angle that you are standing at. 41. This is where we are. And I'm even going to draw a little person here. That's where I'm standing. Okay? And we're going to get 2 of the 3 sides that are going to be important. All right? Look at this 32. Does that 32 count as the opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse? This counts as the adjacent. The x, what does the x count as? Right, the opposite. And the one that we don't need is the h, right? The h, useless. We're going to try to avoid it. So, which one of our three is it that uses O and A, not H? Sine, cosine, tangent. Right, it's this one, TOA, or tangent. So, that is tangent, opposite over adjacent. So when we make our little equation here, we're going to write tan, which is the abbreviation for tangent. Then we're going to have a gap for the degrees, a gap for the, angle. We're going to have equals a fraction. And we're going to have a gap on top for the O and a gap on bottom for the A. And when we finish all that, our answer should be x equals. So what number goes next to the tan? Tangent. 41. What number goes on top? It's actually a letter. It should be the letter x. And what number goes on bottom? 32. At this point, you type it in and you're done, right? All you have to do is organize your fraction. Once you organize it, type it, and you're finished. I'm going to wait on somebody to shout out the answer. Anybody got it? What'd you get? 27.8. Does that sound good? All right, let's see. Just to double check, just to show, tangent 41 equals x divided by 32. You shouldn't have to mess with the degree thing. It's going to stay in degrees until we kind of close Desmos and open it back up. And I can see 27.8. That looks perfect. Another good idea, just before you leave, this is a real life triangle that should make a little bit of sense, right? So 32 and 27, those are numbers that kind of look like they should work together, right? If you get an answer that's like 10,000, it's not going to be right. You're not going to have a side that's 10,000. So sometimes just for literally 1 second, I say 32, 27, looks pretty normal. I think we're good. All right, let's continue to pick up the pace. I got my 21. This time my little person is going to stand all the way at the top. What side would you say that the x is for this one? This is the adjacent. Notice I'm labeling this, right? There's no hurt to do that. What about the 26? Which one is that? That's the hypotenuse. And so this one that we don't need is the O. So we're going to pick the, trig ratio that does not have the O, that uses the A and the H, and that is cosine, the middle one. So we're going to use, cosine, which is the adjacent over hypotenuse. And then we're going to set up our nice little thing here with COS, which is for cosine, equals fraction. The degree that goes here is 21. The A, which is the top, is an X, and the bottom is a 26. And so final answer, cosine 21 equals fraction x on top of 26. I heard 24 point something. 21 equals fraction x over 26. And yeah, 24 looks like it's right for me. 24.3, because the 2 is going to go up to a 3 because of that 7. 24.3. All right. All right, let's... Here you go. Let's start a little timer, see how long it takes us to do number 7, even if we don't rush super fast. So, here we go. Number 7, I'm going to look at this question. I'm going to find where my angle is. I'm going to draw my little guy here. That's where I'm going to be standing. Now I'm going to consider which one is which. Next to my person is going to be the adjacent. Opposite my person is obviously going to be the opposite. The longest side, which is opposite the 90, is going to be the hypotenuse. For this question, we don't seem to need the H at all. We're working with the O and the A. Are we going with sine, cosine, or tangent? Tangent. Tangent is TOA, which is O on top of A. So let's make a little equation here. Tangent equals fraction. The number is 55 for my angle. The top is an O, which is X, and the bottom is 8, which is my adjacent. And then we're just going to go to Desmos. It's only been a minute so far, and again, I'm still kind of explaining things. Equals fraction, X over 8. Look for it. I got 11.4. Is that what you got? Sweet. Whole question's over. It took us 80 seconds.
I just can't find out whether there's going to be 10 or...
I got you. So, let me write this answer down, and then I'll go through that one more time. Good question. The answer we got was 11.4. Okay. So, the key here, as far as choosing sine or choosing tangent or choosing cosine, is to look at what sides are important, right? So when I see this, the 8 is always going to be important because they gave me that information. That's an A. So whichever one I choose, better incorporate adjacent, right? Then I have this one, okay? This one over here is the opposite, and it's going to be important because that's where they put the X. Now, this one on top here, which is the H, isn't important. They didn't tell me how long the H was. They didn't even ask me how long H was, because if they put the X up there, that's one thing, but it's just totally blank. So I'm going to try to choose the one that uses my important stuff, O and A. And it's pretty simple. Like, look up here. Does this one have OA? No. It has the H, and we don't need the H right now. So we're not going to choose sine. Does this one have OA? No. And it has the H. We don't care about the H for this question. But tangent has the O and the A. Tangent doesn't care about hypotenuse. I don't care about hypotenuse for this question. So that's why we chose tangent. Okay? Now, the best news here is if you do it wrong, right? So let's just say that I'm like, oops, let's use like cosine for this question. And so I say, okay, well, the cosine of 55 is equal to fraction, the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And we say, okay, well, the adjacent is 8, and the hypotenuse, once you get this far, it's like, wait a second, like the hypotenuse is up here.
How you know it's cosine?
I don't know. So for this question, it's not cosine. This is literally the question that we're doing right now, number 7, which should be tangent, right? I'm showing you, if you do it wrong, you should notice, because you should be like, dang, well, wait a second. I don't need the H, right? It doesn't talk about H. So when you do it wrong, as long as you're actually not just randomly putting numbers in, cosine is A over H, you should probably recognize, wait a second, that H is messing me up.
So how do we know it's 10? For number 7?
So here's our guy, right?
Yeah.
And we know that we're standing here because that's the angles that it gives us, right? We know that X, which is important, is on the O side. And we know that 8, which is important, is on the A side. So we're going to then look at our SOHCAHTOA and look for the one that has O and A, right? Right, you see how tangent has O and A? These ones have H. I don't care about H for this question. So it's you know, at some point, once you know what you're looking at, it's really obvious which one it should be. So let's see if we can do this one, okay?
So how does tan relate to TOA? TOA? So like, it's a polarization thing?
Right, so there's 3 trigs, okay? And really there's more, but not for a long time. There's sine, which is sin, abbreviated because the other ones are longer. There's cosine, and there's tangent, okay? And it would be a lot to try to memorize sine opposite hypotenuse, cosine adjacent hypotenuse, tangent opposite adjacent. So we shorten it all down to just one letter each, right? Sine opposite hypotenuse, cosine adjacent hypotenuse.
So that's where that come from?
Tangent opposite adjacent.
I did not. I would have had this the whole time.
I'm pretty surprised. I'd hate to say that I feel like I've said it a couple times, but maybe I haven't been clear. Here we go. Let's do this last one, and you'll impress yourself with how fast you learn that. So it only took us 80 seconds to do a question. Don't forget, we're standing here. What do you think this 15 is? Is that an O, an A, or an H? That's an opposite. What about the X? That's a hypotenuse. So now, you see how it says OH. Which one of these uses OH? SOA, which is just so, but which is sine. And so we're going to use sine equals fraction. And we know that so means that the opposites go on top and the H's going on bottom. Okay, it has been a little while, and you may have been for like 2 minutes now, a little bit like, okay, hurry up. But we are going to get to the very last thing here, okay? We might only do 1 or 2 more questions because this is the last issue we might run into, all right? If we set it up, the 33 is our degree. The 33 goes right here. The opposite goes on top, which is the 15, and the hypotenuse goes on bottom, which is the X. Then we go to Desmos, we type it in, the sine abbreviated to SIN. What do you say? 33 equals 15 divided by X. It shouldn't be curly. But the problem is, when I have this vertical line, and this is one of those things, if you're not following along, you're going to eventually raise your hand and say, I'm confused. If I type this in, I get my vertical line, I can see that it's between 20 and 30, but Desmos doesn't give me that dot to click on. And I can't just guess because we're getting decimals, you know what I'm saying? So you can't just guess that it looks like 26 or something. So here's what happened. Look at our equation. We are dividing by X. We've done this a couple times. Desmos does not like it when you divide by X. Because what if that X is 0? Now you're dividing by 0 anyways. What do? You can't flip it. Because if you flip it, then that means sine, which should be opposite over hypotenuse, turns into hypotenuse over opposite, and that's not right. No, she's not class. What we need to do instead is move this X. Think about it like we're going to do cross multiplying or multiply this X on both sides just to get it out of the bottom. So if we think about it like this, you know, times X times X. So when we do this, bottom line is, if you're not getting the answer because the X is on the bottom, you need to get the X out of the bottom and go put it all the way in the front. Now, how did it get there? All we did was multiply both sides by X, This one cancels out, and it shows up in the front all the way over here. Now, the truth is, that doesn't do anything interesting when it comes to math, right? No student has ever had to do that in the history of trig, but Desmos is very picky. Desmos does not want to divide by x. When we rewrite it like this, now you can see it's going to give you that dot. It's in the same place, right? It's still in the same place. It hasn't moved at all, but Desmos is able to give it to us now. So we've learned everything there is to know now about finding this last side, and that includes our one little hiccup, which is if dividing by x is a thing, just put it in the front. So we're going to put that in the front. The answer is going to be 27.5. The 4 does not round it up.
So what we do again? We multiply the x by the 33.
If the x is in the bottom, just delete it and put it all the way at the front. Look at what I have typed in right here. Right? When we started, it was divided by x. Desmos doesn't like divide by x. So we multiply by x on both sides. Bottom line is, just move that x all the way to the front, and Desmos will tell it to you. This is a Desmos issue, because Desmos doesn't like dividing by x. All right, let's do one more question. And I'm going to pick up the pace here, and I'm going to really go through this. And, we've learned everything now. Okay, ready? Let's do another little stopwatch. Let's see how long this takes us. Last time it took us 80 seconds. Go. I'm going to draw my little person by the 43. I'm going to label the x as my hypotenuse and the 36 as my adjacent because it's right next to me. I'm going to look for the sine, cosine, tangent. Which one is AH? AH is cosine, so I'm going to use the cosine to help me find the answer. 43, the adjacent is 36, and the hypotenuse is x. This is what we just talked about. Dividing by x is going to cause a little bit of a problem on Desmos. So I'm going to go to Desmos. I'm going to type cosine 43 equals 36 divided by x. Desmos doesn't like this because we divided by x. Backspace, move it all the way to the front. Questions over. 49.2. That one took us exactly a minute, and I'm still explaining the whole thing. What's up?
All right, so for cosine, just hypotenuse, why don't you put the x under it?
Right, so the cosine is the adjacent and hypotenuse, and for this question, we're working with the adjacent and the hypotenuse, right? And the cosine, the A goes on top and the H goes on bottom. So real simple, right? The A is the top number and the X is the bottom number.
What do we rewrite it as? X.
Just literally don't change anything. Take the X all the way to the front.
So the 36 is still here.
Yep. So look, I'll show you. I'll show you again actually because I showed you a couple times here, but it starts out like this. Desmos doesn't like dividing by x, so we just press backspace, backspace. We go all the way to start, and we press the X button. We don't change the cosine, we don't change the 43, we don't change the 36. And Desmos will then let you select it, and this one is 49.2. X equals 49.2.
Certain doors, it's not yours.
What's up?
How many retesters did you have in the boot camp before you sent them over to? 10.
But
did you take attendance? I didn't take attendance, so if you didn't, it's so.
Well, here's what happened.
I can't believe you still have it in your trash.
Gross. It was
Sorry,
on my
guys.
desk. It's okay. We just finished up.
Okay.
These were here when we started.
The highlighted people, okay.
But then people just kept coming,
Yeah,
and it was
yeah.
already a distraction, and I didn't.
You just quit, that's fine. I'm kind of curious, did any of them pass? 'Cause
Oh,
I'm
gotcha.
looking at scores, so,
Well,
thank you.
Fingers crossed.
Thank you. Also, appreciate what you said about Reebok.
yeah.
He heard that, and I think it'll give us some feedback to know.
Of course. Doing my best, guys. They're trying to push Dreambox on us. Fighting back.
Oh, no.
No, not for the geometry kids, but for Algebra 1, they're trying to like make the high school kids do it. And we're kind of over it. I had to stand up to the principal this morning, guys. All right, so this recording's been going. I forgot. No big deal. We got an extra long ending to the video here. That's it. All right, SOHCAHTOA. Pick the one, set up your ratio, type it in Desmos. You don't have to think. The two Desmos quirks here, you got to hit the wrench and degrees. Hopefully today you won't have to do that ever again, but if you show up tomorrow with a new Desmos, you might have to hit the wrench and hit the degrees. If the X is on the bottom, we got a problem, so just move it to the front. All right.
So do we put a